it's so, because I can at least like talk about it like a little bit now because now I get the full context. Like I remember the little bits that I did here, or at least when it came to like reviews and such, I've been very, whenever I want a media blackout about something, like I'm pretty good at being consistent about it. But like the very faint few things I did hear, were like a lot of guys, a lot of people complaining, mainly guys, that like, oh, the like Silent Hill F hates men, and I'm just like, what are you talking about? Like, a Silent Hill game can't focus on femme issues. Like, I'm sorry, three already exists, but like seeing this, like, hey, there's a lot of alcohol bottles here. There's a lot of stray alcohol bottles in this town. The way that the dolls are used, like, no, it's not that it hates men. Like, shoes right there, and he clearly means well. Cause like, no, it's just, this is what, like, horror, horror. Hey, there's a reason why a lot of girlies like horror.
この
There's
先に抜け道があったはず。
there's a reason why a lot of girlies really like horror. There's a reason why a lot of the very highly acclaimed horror games, especially when it comes to narrative, um, tend to be femme led. And like, hey, it's because turns out being femme or being a woman is very is a very harrowing experience. The reason I'm only halfway joking when I say F, and Silent F stands for feminism. Yeah, turns out being femme or femme presenting is a harrowing experience that traumatizes a lot of people who go through that, especially that age of girlhood and whatever horrible, whatever typically horrible experience ends up making them realize, oh, I am perceived as very different from men and I will not be treated the same. Turns out that's a lot of fuel for a lot of really good horror. And it turns out, like, hey, being on the receiving end of that is a pretty scary thing. The main thing I can say is that maybe some men should learn a little bit more compassion, or learn that, hey, maybe women go through various different things that they don't have to, and that maybe a lot of women have very strong opinions and feelings when it comes to men based off of other experiences that they've had with men, especially a lot of men who pretend to act better or who don't know how to act better. Again, the reason why this monster I hate more than anything, the greedy staring eyes, the greasy palms, the disgusting way it acts all chummy with me. All of it is completely repulsive. What's more, it never even bothers with guys. Hey, this is also the enemy that really likes to throw its arms up and run at you and grab you and then lick you. I wonder why that would cause psychological damage to a girl. Truly curious. I'd say that one of the main exceptions with regards to horror media is any horror that were, because the way the war instrumentalizes and depersonalizes men as tools, but I haven't seen much of that, and I really wish more horror was made to explore that. Yeah, like, no, that's a really good, no, that's why I really, honestly, that's one of the parts that I really like about Death Stranding. Um, and, and that's why, how do I go into this? Because I used to not take, but, I had a class that was like war and literature, and it would focus a lot on like, oh, this is the impact that, like, here's a bunch of writers and their perspectives on like how war impacts men, or like how war has impacted them or changed them and like has made their lives harder, and how the PTSD that they go through. And like, it was a really, no, it was a really, I really enjoyed that class. um and like, no, war is a very harrowing experience that people should not go through. Turns out it messes up people a lot. How do I say this? because it's a thought that I've had for a very long time, and especially playing through this now really helps with that. I'm not saying horror is like innately feminine, but especially femme and femme presenting people are definitely a lot better or open when it comes to talking about their emotions, especially to one another, whereas men aren't exactly as allowed to open up about those things to one another, which means, hey, a guy trying to talk to another guy about how hard it is for him going through war and all this other stuff, turns out, oh, what are you, gay? You're talking about your feelings. Men aren't really as allowed to express their feelings, and I think a lot of that also comes in when it comes to horror, which is why, which is typically why, which is why I think a lot of survival horror, or at least horror that tends to focus on men, or horror that tends to try to appeal to men, or like appeal to men as like their main audience. That's why a lot of them tend to focus on monsters that are like so scary, can like kill you, but you still fight back. But like the monster has like 30 health bars and can kill you in like 2 hits. It's a disempowerment thing. And that disempowerment being the source of the horror, congratulations, that's the starting point if your protagonist is a woman, especially if she's in a position where like there's other male characters who have a lot of control over them, or control over their finance, or control over their future, or control over their bodies. Like, in a patriarchy, turns out women are inherently disadvantaged and disempowered, which also means that anything else on top of that just adds to the horrors as well, which makes it very fertile ground for horror. And it also makes it so that, like, hey, no, there's a reason why a lot of femmes and women like enjoying horror. But that's also why, like, I like a lot of femme horror stuff. That's why I really like Little Goody Two Shoes. That's why I like, technically adjacent, but like Alice Madness Returns, or American McGee's Alice Madness Returns. My apologies. Silent Hill 3, um, A Haunting Ground, Kuon. Why do I feel like I'm forgetting one more? Rule of Rose. Like, there's a reason why the girlies really like those ones, because it's a very personal type of thing. It's a relatable experience that a lot of femmes and women can relate to, and then they can discuss that with each other. That's why Fox Mask, like, ugh, I even hate thinking about it, but like him, like holding onto her shoulder and like holding her hand, like really grossed me out, especially as she's constantly pushing herself doing things that she clearly doesn't want to do, because like, oh, well, he says that he'll take care of me, and like, oh, I'm sorry for making you go through that, but I'm gonna keep making you go through worse. Like, no, that's a very deeply visceral reaction that unfortunately comes from real experiences. Like, it sucks. It sucks to be like, I have to always have my guard up around roughly like 40+% of like the people that I'm gonna run into. But that's the unfortunate reality of women and femmes. And then sometimes other women aren't exactly the safe place either, which ends up building into a very persecuted mindset, where you kind of don't really trust a lot of people, and it becomes really hard to open up about your emotions and talk about them to people. No, there's a reason why I really like there's a reason why I like horror games so much, and it's because they allow for conversations that just aren't very, there's not a lot of things that a lot of people can kind of like talk about openly in a very fun way. But like, hey, talking about them through thanks to like a video game really helps a lot, especially when it's really well grounded. It gives some distance while not diminishing it. Yeah, Hinako's not a real girl, but there are real girls like Hinako. There are real girls who have gone through experiences like this, who have had very unfortunate experiences with, like, I'm trying to remember. There was a visual novel that I read multiple years ago that stuck with me very depressingly, because it was talking about like historical Korean arranged marriages. And it was like, because what was it? The setup. I'm trying not to say what it was in the event that somebody just stumbles across it, but it was a girl from relatively our modern time, essentially being transported backward. About a Korean woman from essentially like our modern times, essentially being teleported backward into an ancient Korean society. And she was essentially forced to be a bride. And I learned a lot when it came to like foot bindings, the way that women were treated as mainly like political tokens, the fact that like it was not uncommon for some men to have multiple wives and just kind of sleep with them in rotation. And like, yeah, no, she kept talking and fighting back too much. Uh, and as a result, they cut out her tongue. And so she wasn't able to speak. Um, like, it's a really. No, history has not been kind. History, patriarchy, and life in general is not very kind to women and femmes. And so having a piece of media like this where it just like it gets it and it gets it earnestly and it gives people something to be like, oh, yeah, that enemy reminded me of this guy, and it's like, oh, well, that enemy reminded me of that guy, and you can bond over that. You don't feel as alone. It doesn't feel isolating when you see other people expressing that they went through various, unfortunately, similar situations. And maybe it helps some of those guys who don't get it possibly get it. They'll possibly get grabbed by one of the enemies that I hate the most and then get licked and get really grossed out and be like, oh, maybe that's why some women really don't like guys who are really forward about getting hugs.